And thank you, David, for that incredible, inspiring keynote speech. We thank you so much for joining us here at Lake Tahoe as we all work together in a by state way to protect this beautiful lake. We are here at the Lighthouse Room at the beautiful Thunderbird Lodge, and I can't think of a better place for me to talk with Dr. Monica Arienzo. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about microplastics and the impact it is having not only on our lake, but our water supply that we see across the state of Nevada right now. And so thank you for joining me today. Let me just tout a little bit about her background. She's the assistant research professor at the Division of Hydrologic Sciences at the Desert Research Institute. And she has earned a doctoral degree in marine geology and geophysics from the University of Miami. And so I have to tell you, I'm going to ask her, before we get into the microplastics and what we all need to do to understand how it's impacting our water supply and how we can be better stewards as well, and all play a role in addressing this issue. Monica, if you would, tell me a little bit about your science story, because I think this is a great, incredible background that you have, and I'm so excited that you chose Nevada to be your home now and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator, for inviting me up here today. It's a wonderful opportunity to get to speak to you. I've always loved the environment. I've always been, an outdoors girl, camping, hiking, my entire life. So when I realized that I could study geology, do all of those things I love, camping, hiking, that for me was really what drew me to studying the environment. Mm-hmm. And I've been really lucky. I've had wonderful mentors all along the way who have helped me and guided me throughout this process of becoming a scientist. And that's, been a huge inspiration for me, or all the other women scientists that I've gotten to work with.
You've had other mentors, that women scientists as mentors that have helped you along the way?
My undergrad mentor was a wonderful woman, female geologist, and mm-hmm. she continues to be a mentor for me.
And geology, why geology? What was it about that science that?
That's a great question. Mm-hmm. I think for me, what drew me to geology is the time component. You can study so many parts of geology, right? You can study the beginnings of the earth, all the way, you can study fossils and all the way to today. And I think that's why I chose geology.
Yeah, and do you think there's more opportunity to really get young girls engaged in science and really talk to them about the benefits of science and how you can make this a career and really be a part of their future and protecting our environment as well? And so is that something that's important for you as you continue your career as a scientist?
Yes, that's very important to me. I not only am a researcher, but I'm also a teacher. So I teach at DRI, mm-hmm. and I mentor students. And for me, it's incredibly important that we encourage diversity in science. It's important not only to provide opportunities for everyone, but also it's important to provide diversity of thought, so we can create new and very diverse solutions to the complex problems that we're going to be facing in the future.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a lot of young kids, just in general, who are not exposed to the opportunities, right?
Yeah. I think many people think a scientist has to look a certain way, and hopefully I can represent something a little different.
Well, I think you do, and I think you do. So let's talk about why we're here today, and what's your concern. And how did you discover that there were microplastics here in the water, and why is that a concern?
In 2018, I attended a conference, and I was listening to a scientist speak about how they had found plastics in Greenland. And I was shocked to learn that they found plastics in Greenland. So I came back to Reno, and I was thinking about, well, if there's plastics in Greenland, where else could they be? Could they be local? And so that is what started us on this journey to look at microplastics. And I got very lucky. I one day ran into my two colleagues, Megan and Zoe, and I mentioned to them, I heard about this thing called microplastics. Do you think we should do some more research in this? And that little conversation sparked us putting our heads together and thinking up this idea to look locally. And so the approach that we've been taking to look at microplastics is to think about microplastics in the Tahoe Basin as a whole.
Okay.
So we've been looking at microplastics from the snow down to the streams, to the surface waters of Lake Tahoe, and then looking at sources like pipes, stormwater pipes that drain into the lake.
Okay.
And so we've taken that approach so we can have this, bigger basin-wide scale of understanding the problem of microplastics.
And so for many people that even live here and in California, they don't realize that Lake Tahoe in this basin is a water supply for many people around here. And similar to Southern Nevada, where Lake Mead is the water supply, and you have identified, or there's been identified microplastics in the Las Vegas wash that drains into Lake Mead for that water supply. So why is that a concern? What impact does it have to lake life as well as humans if those microplastics are in our water supply?
As far as the impacts to aquatic life, there are some studies showing that microplastics can have negative health effects for organisms when they consume plastics. And like you mentioned, we have been interested in looking at not only Lake Tahoe, but the water that flows from Las Vegas to Lake Mead, the Las Vegas wash. And we've been studying fish that live in Las Vegas wash to see if they have plastics. And unfortunately, we did find that some of the fish did have plastics in their stomachs, and that's something we're still working on continuing into this fall to understand, are there any health effects and how many plastics are inside of them, and those types of questions. As for the human health effects, there are no known health effects of microplastics to humans, but I think it's an area of continued research, and we'll keep researching that into the future. And I think it's important that we do know if there are or aren't.
Right. And so if you would, talk about how you're identifying them in the work at Desert Research Institute and how that plays a critical role in the research that you're doing around microplastics. So for the layperson, so explain to us what you're doing to discover and the techniques and tools that you use.
So we are using a range of different techniques and tools. To study the fish, we go out and we collect the fish, and we work with an aquatic ecologist who helps us with that. For the lake, we've been looking at the surface waters of the lake. So what we do is we either have our sample bottles that we bring out and we collect those samples. In this case, we sometimes collaborate with the League to Save Lake Tahoe to use their volunteers to help us collect those samples. And what we've done in that case is we've tapped into a citizen science approach where their pipekeeper volunteers go out and collect samples for us and bring them back to the lab. And that's a wonderful opportunity to engage the public in our research. So solutions to microplastics, I think, is going to be a fairly complex solution. Okay. And what we're hoping is that our science can help inform policymakers, help inform water managers, and help inform local community members. So what we've really been focusing on is working with those community members and policymakers to help understand what are the needs. What questions do our communities have about microplastics, and how can we use the science to help them understand or find solutions? So we've been surveying local policymakers, we've been surveying local water managers and other community members to understand what are their concerns about microplastics, and how can we use the science to help them solve those needs and develop informed science and actionable solutions.
And so part of the goal here is education, right? So educating that it is happening and educating the public. And so how can we, the public, play a role in addressing this issue? I mean, obviously it is a concern, the level of microplastics in our water supply and is a concern for many of us. So what should we be doing? What do we know? What can you tell the public in general?
So we refer to this as your microplastics footprint. So how can you reduce your microplastics footprint? And we recommend kind of the most obvious thing, but is still a problem, is to not litter. And the work we've seen from the League to Save Lake Tahoe and Clean Up the Lake demonstrate how there's still a lot of trash being left on our beaches and in our lake. And so that's the first thing I would say is don't litter, especially cigarette butts. Those are the big ones. Cigarette butts very quickly degrade and they can form microplastics very quickly.
See, people wouldn't even know that. I would not even realize that. So there's microplastics in just about everything, right?
Yep.
Is that right? That's not
synthetic
or man-made, right?
So big macroplastics
Yeah.
can, what we call macroplastics, the big stuff, that can break down then to form microplastics. So if you leave your cigarette butts, if you put it out in the beach sand, very quickly, right, that's going to break down and form those little bits of plastic.
Okay.
So
Plastic bottles as they erode everything else, that because plastic seems to have a long life that we are finding. Right?
Yes, exactly.
And now we're going to have to learn to live with it, and we've got to figure out how we decrease the impacts of it, because we don't know its impact to our lake life, as well as humans in general, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
That's incredible.
And other recommendations we give are, these days it's a little bit harder, but carpool if you can. That helps reduce tire wear and tear, which we know is a source of microplastics. Limit how often you wash your clothing, because every time you wash your clothing, you're producing microplastics in that water that comes out of your washing machine. And hang dry your clothing when you can, because we've been studying how the drying cycle might emit plastics as well. We've been employing a method called citizen science. So what we do is working with the League to Save Lake Tahoe and their Pipe Keeper program. We've given our volunteers 4 of these aluminum bottles, and we've asked them to go out and sample stormwater. And so this is these are pipes that flow into Lake Tahoe, and we want to know if those pipes are a source of microplastics. So as a scientist, I have my responsibilities in Reno, teaching, mentoring, doing research, and so I can't be up here checking stormwater pipes. So the beauty of bringing in the citizen scientists into our research is that they can help us with that. And then they're engaged in our research. And hopefully that can be another form of education we can also do, is by communicating our science and involving people in our science.
Citizen scientists. And if it's the perfect example is if we want to get, again, young kids and individuals involved in science, this is a perfect way that they can participate and partner with a scientist to figure out what is happening with our lake. So that is wonderful. Thank you. I so appreciate you being with me and all of us today. First of all, let me just say thank you for all of your work. And very quickly, the partners that you have on working with you, please identify the partners that are working with you on this, because I think this is so important for Nevadans to understand.
Yeah. Because in our research, we're really interested in making sure our solutions are actionable solutions. We wanted to make sure we were partnering with those local organizations. And we're so lucky. We work in a place where people really care about the environment, right? There's a lot of stewardship already going on. And so we've been partnering with the League to Save Lake Tahoe, trying to engage the citizen scientists in our work. We've also been working with Clean Up the Lake and UC Davis Turk. And with them, we're trying to understand what is the trash that is that has been put into the lake, and we're trying to identify the type of trash and quantify how much trash there is down there. So it's very exciting to get to work with all these different wonderful organizations.
Well, that is wonderful. So everybody who's listening, if you want to participate, you want to get involved with this issue, reach out to Dr. Monica Arienzo. She's done an incredible job. All of the partners are fantastic. This is an important issue for our water supply, not just here in Lake Tahoe, but in our state as well. And Doctor, I cannot thank you enough for all the good work that you're doing. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.